Namaskara. Meru Foundation for Indic Arts Paravagi Ellarigu Hritpurvakavada Suswagata. Welcome to everyone who is here to celebrate the power of women with the powerful stories of women. I am Dr. Rajshri, your host on behalf of Meru Foundation for Indic Arts. Bharata is a country that has always had both men and women go hand in hand in all walks of life. Our philosophy, in fact, reflects the balance of Stri and Purusha Shakti in every stage of life. In fact, this is very aptly represented in today's event, where we have three men discussing a book of stories on women written by a majority of women. In fact, the writers also have a good mix of men and women. So that is Bharata for you. The gods that we worship also represent both male and female energies, like the Shiva and Shakti, Brahma, Saraswati, Shiva, Shakti, Lakshmi, and Vishnu. So we begin today's program with an invocation celebrating the feminine energy with the Sri Sutta. Such positive vibrations. Just listening to the chant makes us all feel so positive and wonderful. I'm sure you agree with me. Today's event is a very special event. I would like to first welcome the guests we have today. We have with us today Sri Shivakumar GV, who is an IT professional. Who is an IT professional with deep interest in Bharatiya Samskruti. I think like most of the Bangaloreans who first do their engineering and then go in search of their passions. He studied the Itihasas, Puranas and the Indian scriptures in great detail, and he's been working in this area for many years now. And very interesting thing about him is that he is greatly inspired by the rivers of India, especially the Saraswati. And no wonder he has put together this wonderful anthology on women who are compared to rivers in their mind and personality. Welcome to this event, sir. We also have with us Sri Prakash Belawadi, so please, who needs no introduction. He is a well-known name in the fields of television, film, theatre, journalism, and politics. He is one of the very few thinkers we have who can also talk and speak very well in multiple languages, Kannada, English included. Welcome to today's evening's program, sir. Achyutha is an entrepreneur who holds a keen interest in the Indian scriptures, politics, and literature. He is very well read. And as the president of Meru Foundation for Indic Arts, he is actively involved in working towards popularizing the Indic Arts in Bangalore. Achyutha will be the moderator for today's discussion. We're all here to discuss and talk and celebrate this wonderful book, Aryaa. I would like the guests to hold up the book for our audiences. This was launched on the 18th of January, just exactly a month ago, and it has gained immense popularity since then. And we at Meru intend to make this book a lot more popular and make sure it reaches far many people, and because it deserves that kind of an audience. This book, Aryaa, is in itself a celebration of the wonderful women of Bharata, whose stories have either been fully or sometimes partly ignored. A book that has 10 stories of 10 women from various different timelines in the history, all of whom carry one common thread: the grit and strength they have shown in standing up to their values in a man's world. There is something very special about a woman who dominates in a man's world, right? It takes certain grace, strength, fearlessness, intelligence, and nerve to take no for an answer. And each time a woman stands up for herself, she stands up for all women. So every story in this book is the story of every woman. Every woman present here, every woman we know, every woman in ourselves. Every woman who has stood up to make her voice heard in a man's world. I was personally very, very touched by reading all the stories. I would definitely encourage all of you to also buy the copy of a book and read. But before I can go on and on about the stories in the book, but I would like the experts to talk a little more about this. I would first invite Sri Prakash Belawadi to talk a little about the book, introduce the book to all of you, and then we will have the discussion, post which there will be a question-answer session. So if you have any thoughts, any questions, please note them down. It will be open for a discussion with the audience.
So thank you everyone for actually making time for this little event today. I have known Shivakumar for some time now because I had gone to give some kind of a talk and do an interactive session many years ago at Mindtree, and we sort of struck a friendship, I would say, which has not been nurtured with the consistency that it probably deserved, but nevertheless we've kind of followed each other a little bit off and on. And when this book was suggested for release, that I should do it, I immediately agreed, because it's the kind of thing you should support, I thought. And I read I told time I was not here. I just read the introduction to the book that he had written. It's a very good introduction. I was struck by it, and I thought a little about what to say, which is about giving a framework to the book itself and how we can approach it. And it was done online, that release event, and they were very gracious about it with me. And I met Achyutha, whom I have not known so long, but I have known him long enough, maybe about 10 years now. And we have struck kind of intense friendship because he's very well read and he's very feisty in argument, and he can find counters to anything that you can put out, and he nuances everything to a point where it becomes really difficult to remember where you started from. So I told him that we should do this, that he should use Meru Foundation, his Meru Foundation Trust. All of you should come together to actually discuss this book. That's what we're going to do now. And hopefully some insights you'll get through this conversation they'll have with each other. He's read the book. In fact, he finished reading the book before I read the book. I still have to read Satyavati, Gargi and Maitri. Everything else I've read. But he is read, and he's ideally suited to deal with the complexity of purpose that inhabits these women in the stories. In fact, he started with a quarrel. When I met him, he said, these are mostly, I agree with them, these are actually the women of Hastinavati, or the women of Mahabharata, or women of the Kuru family, except for Gargi and Maitri. So, I'm sure that question will come at some point in time. He's already heard it, so we'll see what it is. Let me talk a little bit about the book. I'll start with a personal story. My younger daughter, I have a lot of friends who have of very different ideologies, diverse ideology. And he was completely struck with my younger daughter's answers to his questions. I won't name the person. Some of you will guess, even if I tell the question. So he asked her about, her purpose in life and what is the point of marriage, and what's the point of having children, and so forth. And my younger daughter, I don't know what answers she gave, but whatever answers she gave, I believe he ended up by saying, "My God, you're so middle class." Now I say this because, see, the women in these stories are completely extraordinary. What is common to all the characters in this is that these women accept challenges of being different, or leading different lives, or doing the different thing with such equanimity and such determination, and they're so steadfast with this that you can't help but see how inspiring they are, in the sense of whatever your plan of life is, it really never works out. Isn't that the point of life? It really never works out like the plan. And you're terribly distressed, It can be as ordinary thing as, I didn't get a flat in Jayanagar. Maybe it can completely distress you, the kind of thing that distresses people these days is like, really, where does that even begin to be a problem, you think? Like everybody is so distressed about something. But these women just do what they think they should do. And that word occurs many times in the stories because they have purpose. You see, that's the point of it. They found purpose to their lives. And that is why these stories are important, that you should tell them. But we are colonized in the mind, and we constantly look for models. Actually, there's the story of Madhavi, which he also talked about. And it's quite intelligently written, that one, in the sense of the author disguising, in personality, Madhavi herself, and it allows her to actually comment on her Western education. We are all Western educated. That's why I'm talking to you in English. Okay, so the thing is, like, to them it seems obvious that Indian women are suppressed. Not now also, of course, but certainly traditionally in Sanatana Dharma, women were suppressed. That is the story they need to tell. Okay, and they really sell that really well. And it's difficult to fight that story. And that Madhavi's story is about that, how you're sold that story. And she's retold that story, and it doesn't seem the same way again. Now, whether you agree with it or not, let us just examine briefly the idea of suppression of women in Aryavarta or Arya Dharma. Where is Swayamvara a concept parallelly in any other rival culture? Where is it there? Is there a rival culture firstly? Why is Swayamvara such a common, casual recurrence in the Indian stories? Why is it there all the time? When the Article 377 thing was discussed, Mukundji actually was the one who told me. He's an RSS, a very senior person in the RSS hierarchy. I didn't know him very well those days. It was just beginning days when I met him. And he said something casually, and it was extraordinary. He says, see, we don't have a notion of ban in Sanatana Dharma. We don't ban any human practice. Humans exist and their different ways exist. But what we have in a Sanatana Dharma, he said, is preference. So there are 8 styles of marriages. Actually, that also occurs, one of the characters says here, right? Either Ulupi or Chitrangada, one of them says, that there are 8 types of, marriages, and you can choose any one of them. The preferred one is the one that is like done most often or aspired to most often, but nothing is banned, he said. And Shatabdani Ganesh, I believe, he did not tell me, but he told a friend of mine, he said, why do they go and seek the opinion of somebody who's done culture studies or literature studies? I mean, it's all good if you do, but I'm saying you should know a little bit of your own before you try to understand somebody else. It's like, somebody doing PhD in African studies, it's like, I find that stunning, if you don't know anything about yourself, what is that? Okay? So, what is this idea that you must learn from them about yourself, that you have to be named by them and you have to understand everything through their eyes? I believe Shatabdani Ganesh said they should ask us, and we will say there is no reference to humiliation on gender preference. See, if you have gone through that drill, you'll say, Judith Butler, who said his gender is performance. But that idea is very embedded in the notion of stories where nobody is banned, nobody is forbidden. The Gandharva type of wedding, no permission sought, no permission received. It is still sacred because the man and woman, actually exchange vows of some nature. Why is that important? See, if you remove everything in the Sanatana wedding, okay, everything you remove, in one way or the other, you cannot remove the idea of Saptapadi and the idea of complementary that follows it. Whichever way you put it, whatever forms it has taken, many recension, northern hours, Satsvaranga, Saptapadina, the Prashni, you can do any number of times, but the thing is, the idea is one of commitment. In the Gandharva wedding, sans witness, nobody is there, okay? The idea of commitment, and then the idea of complementarity. I am not complete without the other. Music and lyrics, earth and sky, word and meaning, Shiva and Shakti, Vagartha, Sampratta, Vagartha Pratipatti, Jagata Pitaram, Parvati, Parameshwara. That idea of complementarity is there. And all that is casually embedded in these stories. I think it's quite extraordinary. And the idea of, who can have how many wives, how many children. In the Madhavi story, there's an idea of virginity. And her realized it is the yogini. You can see it as that metaphor, right? So she will say, it is not about the hymen, she says, It is not about, it's about not having the baggage. That is the Kanya Sthiti. She says, it's an extraordinary thing. And in the true spirit of these stories, or these characters, I should say, we'll have to say that who is the person who is the arbiter, who sits and says, this is correct and this is not correct. For too long, our colonizers of different nature have held us in thrall, and we are always looking to see endorsed by some really third-rate publication somewhere, you know. Or Wendy Doniger, the book Bandag, I used to write a column in Mirror, I think. And I think that banished me, you know. But the thing is, in that, I had put in my column the Hindus, and in the bracket I put, you know, who they. Because like, who are you telling? You are identifying us. I'm looking, you know, behind my shoulder. You're talking to whom, really, you know? It's not that we have not done bad sometimes, or a lot of times, but you know, we have gone through a civilizing process which is not yet complete, where we have made the stuff that you think is wrong or we think is wrong as illegal in the Constitution of India. Many of the practices that you hold are abhorrent have been made illegal by consent in the republic that we have offered to ourselves. I don't think that justice has been done uniformly, correct? Let's think about this, really, right? Now I'm saying all this because this is the framework in which we should see it. All this boils down to the idea of dharma. See, the purusharthas actually are a dharmic construct. Okay, now I won't elaborate on that, but they're a dharmic construct. Why do you live? What is the purpose of your life? Is a dharmic construct. It is not given to you, it is something for you to discover. Right? Now the thing is, what is dharma? You can't do everything that is right, because it's always in conflict. Right? Otherly male pankti, you have to find what is the priority, and that priority is action that you will do, that is right, or you will not do. It's not you have many choices of action, you don't have. You have only one choice of action, whether you will do it or not. It's a binary. I do it or not, 1 or 0. That's what it is. Whatever else you do by compulsion, not by volition, doesn't matter really. Okay? And I will just read this little gem about dharma. I'll finish in 2-3 minutes. See, this is an extraordinary one. See, there's a play, Marathi play called Suno Janame Jai, translated to Hindi, and in Kannada it's actually translated as Nukeru Janame Jaya. It's a very famous play, Sri Rangaradu. And you know, it is the idea of what Janame Jaya is told is a burden that this event carries now, that we will tell you, or we will discuss this, and we have to tell others that you people have written this. There are 2 writers here who have done this. We have to tell this story, you know, and this is a metaphor of who we are, our orality, you know, that we have preserved this. No other colonized place has kept its own, like India has done. Everybody has lost it, you know, either surrendered or forgotten. Only India, with great fights among ourselves, we have kept it. With false enmities, you know, we have kept it. But the thing is, that orality is this telling. Hingittu kelu. This one begins with that, okay? And it, after telling the, you know, the Mahabharata story in delectable verses, you know, very quickly, he comes to this. It is this Itihasa Kavya here that shows us things that are, things that may come to me and come to be, and things that were, things that are meant not to be, and things that never were. It is a tale that to you I now confer. This not to recite would be to err. For in small things mundane, oft ignored and shown disdain, are morsels of heaven hiding in plain sight. And then he says, immutable, O king, is dharma, then, now, and forever. The dhruva to which to set your compass of karma, which is action, not a plaything, it is of king and seer, or bound by a ritual, homa and yagna, not a contrivance of grantha or war. It exists even in the ordinary, not just in gesture grand, neither is it for only philosophy, to command. Invisible threads dharma beside you and me, tells one's last breath even from mother's womb. For a life well lived, this is key. Seek it, learn it, and abide, else you invite doom. For all him, her, me, and thee, it extracts meticulous fee, for it examines with a fine-tooth comb. Follow the dharma, escape maya, both are but parts of Bhagavan's divine leela. Know that dharma and you, your atma, both are sanatana. Okay? So now if somebody asks what is dharma, you see how he struggled to explain it. Andre adu mata alla, jati antalla, you have to go on telling, right? Now he makes an effort to tell that. I just give this as a metaphor of the work these people have done, using magical realism, using conflict. They put their stories, they plotted in at the peak of the conflict that these women face, and explore in dialogue. There is one, I think Subhadra, is written like a screenplay, You can actually perform each one of these as short drama, because there is conflict inherent to it, which is not casually inherent in a novel, which is why the Ramayana or Mahabharata are not novel forms, they're set in conflict, they're dramatic forms, that's why, And that these stories have captured, for which I compliment the writers and I compliment the curator. And I will leave these two to discuss it, and you should pardon me if I want to go and sit there and listen to them. Okay? Thank you very much.
We would have liked to have some of your perspectives on some of the thoughts that we would be discussing. So, if you don't mind. Thank you everyone for making time today on a working day and being present here for this discussion. And we would like to start off. And when Prakash mooted the idea of having a conversation around this book, I was excited primarily because I saw that I didn't see the list of stories that were part of it, but the very idea of an anthology of Vedic women kind of made me think that these would be characters who we are not familiar, or to get to know some of these characters. And reading the book has been a really wonderful exposure to me. For one thing is the stories have stayed true to the original source. All the stories that I've read, except for Chandelier Durita, the one Prakash quoted from, which is in a poem form. That is a character I was not familiar with, or I might have missed out when I read the Mahabharata, but that is actually a phenomenal poem, and it was really good for me to read it. And I congratulate the team of Indica, the authors, and Shivakumar for curating this really wonderful collection. And so I'll start off with the very generic question. How did this idea come about? Was there a trigger, either a negative or a positive inspirational thing which happened, which made you conceive this book and come up with this wonderful work?
Thank you so much, Achyutha. First of all, my gratitude and thanks to the Meru Foundation, Sri Prakash Belawadi, Sri Achyutha, for organizing this beautiful evening in this August hall. I have been a participant in this hall on innumerable occasions, and this is a legendary hall where many book of many stalwart has been released, and many cultural gatherings have happened. So it's it's our good luck that we've had this opportunity. Thanks for that. Now coming to why this anthology, I would like to take a little time and elaborate because this is important. I'll go back in time a little bit. As a young boy, I was a voracious reader, and the first Amarachitra Katha comic that I read was Savitri. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, I do not recollect now, but I just read it, and I won't say I was, it was a fascinating story, by itself. And that's it. I kept moved on, read many more stories. And I had the opportunity to be engaged with Itihasa Purana very significantly since childhood. And there are many such stories like Savitri. You will not at once think of it as any remarkable. If you read the other stories, like Shandilya Durgatha is really a remarkable story which comes in 3 pages and goes off in Mahabharata and you don't even recollect. But growing up, and especially, seeing other parts of India, not so much Karnataka, I think it's still better, is the incorrect narrative around Savitri that really struck me. I mean, for heaven's sake, here is a lady who is learned in Shastras, who is learned in archery and warfare, who the people consider as a Devi and who is beyond others, who no boy of that era could match, and she ends up not choosing anybody for herself. Then not just the family, the ecosystem, minister comes and recommends to Ashwapati that she be allowed to choose for herself. So she goes on a yatra to choose for herself, and then finds Satyavan and chooses him. And when Narada comes and tells her he's going to die in the next 1 year, she still insists and finally overrules everybody and then marries, and then the rest of it we all know, and then snatches him from Yama and restores everything back to her in-laws. By any stretch of understatement, she is the hero of the story, and she is brave. By no stretch can she be subdued. Yet, the image of Savitri is that of a subdued woman. Sati Savitri, especially in some quarters, I won't pick it where it is because you all know what it is. That used to infuriate me, and at least since the last 25 years, I've lived with this fury within me that how can such a thing be distorted? If you can distort the story of Sati Savitri, then you can literally destroy, not even distort everything else in the tradition. And then I now know this, it is not just Sati Savitri. As I have imagined every other, account, it's not just the women's account, it's many other accounts that are distorted, but this used to particularly bother. So I had this passion of collecting all stories where women are positively portrayed as having extraordinarily contributed to the civilization, but in the modern era has gotten distorted. So I used to make a list of such things. Then I had made up my mind at some stage, whenever if I have an opportunity, this will be a book where the accounts are to be told in truth. And for me, the main concern for me is my own daughter. I want her to grow up knowing this is how the accounts are. I don't want to pass on a distorted account to the next generation. It is this pressing urgency that is the root of this anthology. By all means, we must criticize what is wrong. We should not hesitate to not criticize, but we should criticize what exists. We should not criticize a transformed version that is convenient for us to criticize, which is what the West has done, and which is what, for heaven's sake, we are internalizing without even questioning. And the modern era is one of inquiry and questioning, going deep into it. On the contrary, there is so much of blurriness that we are accepting. So this is the history to the pressing thing within my own mind.
It's very interesting that you mentioned the story of Savitri being one of the key triggers for this kind of a list.
Yeah, unfortunately, I could not cover it in this anthology.
Yeah.
And in the next anthology, definitely.
So my question is, how long is your list of other stories that you want to bring out in the next?
Yeah, that's important. So this is what when Harikiran Garu, who is the head of Indic Academy, he came up with this concept of anthology. I would have otherwise thought of me only writing, and then he said that I want curators to come on board and then invite other authors for your vision and then involve them and then write anthology. So this is the first anthology that I made a proposal, and he immediately accepted. And in my own list, from the Itihasa Purana itself, there will be 100. Like Shandilya Duhita is not known, and she is an ascetic who, when Narada says that you have to get married to go to heavens, she marries another sage for a single day, and her tapasya carries even that person.
May I say something? I want to remark on that.
Yeah.
I don't know, many of you will be familiar with this, offense taking and outrage, because Bananji made a remark about Shankaracharya. Avange samsara annadu gothirliಲ್ಲ, avನೇನು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾನೆ and somebody told me ekvachanದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. I said, they're actually having conversations like friends.
Yeah.
Different time spaces. You can't take offense to this, I say.
Absolutely.
But in that point is so important. She is not keen. She doesn't meet somebody who actually interests her more than her jignasa. She's just searching for something, and she meets no challenging person with whom she can engage. She becomes old. She doesn't care at all. And then when Narada says, you cannot come, the stairway to heaven is not open because, you have not done this. And all right, she says, and she does it. I find that fascinating. What an idea.
And this is the view of the tradition. In the view of the tradition, Grihastha is paramount. So there's another story in Mahabharata called the Jaratkaru story. The Jaratkaru is not married and he doesn't have children. So one fine day he goes and then finds a set of sages hanging from a tree, from their feet. And he stands, who are you? He asks. And they say that we are the unfortunate ancestors of a sage called Jaratkaru, and he is not married. So, our great lineage, cannot continue, due to which, our state of affairs is like this. Lineage means a thought. It's not so much the, children. But, we have built a great parampara, and who is there to carry forward? So, Jaratkaru is stand. So, this treatment, it's a very equal treatment in the tradition, and that's why Shandilya Duhita does not get, offended by this. She treats it as a very common thing. So, if you take very famous characters like Subhadra, let's say, there are so many things that we do not know. So, we do not know that she anchors Parikshit, when nobody else is there. So, like that, we can cover 300 women. And if we come to the modern era, and if you add people like Shandilya Duhita and so many others, there's another sage called Chandili, another fascinating story. She teaches a lesson to Garuda. And like that, if you do, from Itihasa Purana, you can get 1,000 beautiful stories. And those beautiful stories come and go in 20 shlokas. Then if you come to the modern era, in every century, I'm talking about, Maurya forward, especially the Gupta period. In every century, you will get at least 10 prominent women. These stone inscriptions have recorded them. And if you just go to literature, you will get some more. And if you come into the Chalukya era and the Rashtrakuta era, It's just mind-boggling number of women who have participated in public affairs. They have actively shaped the civilization. There is no charity that needs to be given to them at all. It is their work. It is their work, and they're fascinating. And they're fascinating by just the virtue of being themselves in their context. They're liberated within their context.
Wow.
There is no liberation that needs to be sought by breaking a glass ceiling or anything, any such extraordinary thing. All that is happening right in, within them. In Karnataka in 11th century, there's a stone inscription. And, it's somewhere in Kolar, I think, somewhere. Now it's in Bangalore Museum. The name of the lady is Savinirmidi. It is written in the stone inscription. Savinirmidi is described as something like Sarvashastra Parangate or Sarvashastra Visharade Prasiddhe or something like that, which means she is versed in all Shastras. Now we can imagine what that all means. Whatever that all meant, it means whatever Shastras were relevant for that region in that era. It's not listed. Her parents' names are given. And there is an image card of Savinirmidi with she reading a manuscript. And the inscription is of course in Kannada, and there is a stool by which side there is a pile of manuscripts, and some description. It's an inscription erected by the villagers, the society, in praise of one of them who they think was extraordinary. Just imagine, somebody who probably may not have been a royal, and there are many royal chieftains in Rashtrakuta and Chalukya. So like this, we can just, if we do proper research, it will be nothing more than 4,000, 4,000, 5,000 women across the country. That's a massive number that will easily come out. We cannot do all of that, of course, but it is my vision to have a prominent number of these series till 1800 at least. And I am very clear that I cannot alone do this. And the idea must inspire others, and others should do it. It's a community project, I would say.
Yeah, definitely a difficult project, but I would also suggest that we bring out these books in the native language.
Absolutely.
Especially, for the reason why native language is important is to inculcate a habit of reading in mother tongues for the next generation.
Absolutely.
And these are the stories are written extremely well, and they appeal from young adolescents to old people. So the stories are really well written. How difficult was it to actually whittle it down just to 10 stories? Because I'm sure you would have got a lot of submissions.
So once we called for the anthology stories on the Indica platform, so we took around 6 months and then we invited stories. So totally we got around 47 plus, I don't recollect, it's almost more than 2 years. And around 25 stories were good enough for us to struggle to decide the 10. Around 5-6 decided by themselves, and another 4, we took a lot of time. Probably I took a lot of time to decide. In the first anthology of this, I wanted it to be very, crystal clear in terms of the prominence of the woman and the substantial nature of the life or the contribution. That I wanted that to be crystal clear. That is one parameter that I gave. The second parameter is it needed to have variety. So there is a Purushartha flow to this book. There is the Kama element graduates into the Artha, graduates into the Dharma complexity, and finally, the closure is through the Gargi Maitreyi, which is, we all know what they were famous for. So I wanted a proper flow. And then the choice became based on whether the stories, how much is it already fleshed out, and if it is already 60-70% well fleshed out, then in the due course of the evolution we can flesh out the other 40%. Otherwise, if it is 20-30%, even if I saw the opportunity, then significant amount of effort, so then we park it, and so on and so forth. So actually in this process, my favorite Savitri got lost out, but you know, that will continue to be the inspiration probably, because of which we'll draw this all the time.
I want to say two more things for this. It's like really ridiculous. See, because he has outlined this part, I want to give you two instances. See, wrong has happened in the past, and how do you correct it? How do you reconcile with it? Ulupi's son asks her, did Arjuna, my father, come and burn the forest? Isn't it wrong? And you know, with great equanimity she says, you know, that in a given time and context, somebody is duty bound to do some things. And something else was created from it. But the son says, but something else was destroyed. We were destroyed. He says, you know, it does happen in history that sometimes some things get destroyed. And you know, for another thing to be built. Now the thing is, there's a right and wrong is not the point, but to be able to encounter this, okay, is an extraordinary thing, okay. The other thing that he said that I'm interested in, he said that they made a civilizational contribution. Now you must research and tell me, Shataudani Ganesh told me the story which I told to Padma Subramanian. She was in tears, okay. You know the Chalukyas and the Pallavas, they fought with each other brutally. And the Chalukyan king, after one of these raids, took his queens, two queens, to the temple. I can't tell their names. He could tell their names also. And she says, choose what you want. The Devasthanadalli iruttalla, wealth, jewelry ella iruttalla. Adralli Tirupatili gold plating machine. That's what the gold found. But anyway, iruttalla, togoli better. So when they come, they don't look at the wealth that is displayed to them. The queens just stare around at the temple, and they ask, who sculpted this? And they say, you know, the Sthapatis here did it. So they ask the king, don't take their wealth, leave it here. Ask them to lend us their sculptors and sthapatis. And that is how they go, and they make miniature models of the temples they'll build and do the Badami Aigole temples. You know, it's a fantastic story. Imagine if you tell the Kannada Tamil story instead of telling the Kaveri dispute. How it will be, you know. This is the thing. They have the civilizational stories are there, and we don't tell them. You know?
Very, very, very true. Very true.
Thank you for that insight. It's really important that we actually bring out these kind of anecdotes and educate. I mean, these are really fascinating things that gives a lot of insight into the minds of our previous generations and how we need to actually take it forward to the future generations. So now, I don't know if this question is going to put you on a spot, but why Vedic women? What are the sources for these characters in the Vedas or during the Vedic period? Because from this, apart from Gargi and Maitreyi, all the references are primarily post-Vedic, clearly the Mahabharata era.
I think that's an important question. We spend a lot of time choosing the word Vedic for this. One of the most important transformations that need to happen in our mind is to overcome this timelining of something as some Vedic and something as post-Vedic, especially when it comes to the Purana, stories. What do I mean by that? The tradition does not view of them as two separate eras in the first place. The historiography or the methodology used to carve the timelines as two separate mutually exclusive timelines is really not a scientifically rigorous argument. So for the tradition, the Itihasa Purana is very much Vedic, and I will tell you why. Mahabharata does not only cover the Kuru Pandava conflict, it covers their past also. It does not cover only the Kuru Panchala lineage, Bharata Kuru past. It covers Yadu past and so many things. So many stories in Mahabharata are actually happening in the Vedic era. So-called Vedic era, I'll put it this way. Because you cannot still draw the line from where it is. The reason being, now you can argue from the Rig Veda. In the Rig Veda, if some of you have read Srikant Talagiri's book on that. So he lists all the kings who are mentioned. The kings who are greatly mentioned with positive are all from the Bharata, Shakuntala's son Bharata, downwards, but they don't enter so much into the Kuru, but they will enter into the Panchala lineage. Devodasa, Pratardhana, and Sudasa, all of them are greatly praised in Rig Veda. That is the lineage. Now Madhavi's story happens before Bharata. Because Madhavi is the daughter of Yayati. And it's all happening in the times when Vishwamitra is in conflict with Vasishtha and so on. Because she marries Vishwamitra, the fourth man. And if you look at hence the sense of lineage, if you compute from the Mahabharata, and you will see that the Rig Veda 10th Mandala refers to some of the Kuru kings just before, Kuru Pandavas. So you can safely assume that somewhere exactly, and Shantanu and Pradipa and all that, with some positive reference. So that is the long period, Bharata era to this. If you take it from a historical standpoint, if you are hell-bent on viewing it from history, because that is still, it is still an approximate. So nothing can be truly called as just the Vedic era, which does not have an overlap with the Puranic era. That is point number one. Point number two, here the Vedic is from a perspective sense of it. Madhavi, Satyavati, a fisherwoman, getting into the, Kuru dynasty. But the dharmic decisions that she takes, or the struggle, the dharmic struggle is shaped by the Vedic thought.
Taking on the burden.
And the concepts, is this right? See, in research, in modern research, anybody who has done a research will know that it's not the solution, but being able to ask this question is the toughest. What is the right question? So here, Dharma framework creates a set of questions which are exclusive. For her, finding the lineage, next person after Shantanu's death, is her responsibility. She will not abandon that. For heaven's sake, she will not abandon. And the conversations between her and Bhishma and the complexities that they deal with, and then Vyasa comes, another set of conversations. Mahabharata lives in its beautiful conversations. And unfortunately, in abridged versions, we collapse it into an event, due to which we lose it a lot. So, every character here, including Chitrangada, who is Manipur's, she wants to ensure that lineage continues, and decisions that she makes are all like that. And there is a process that's happening, and all of them are shaped by the Purushartha perspective. And accordingly, the right and wrong is being shaped by that pursuit of truth and pursuit of what is sacred and what is just for the future generations. So the thought that shapes these women and the context in which they are operating, that is Vedic. And hence the choice of the word Vedic women. Here the Vedic women does not mean that the so-called era that is defined by Max Muller, it's not that. And that's why finally we chose the name Aryaa for that reason. Because if there is one word that starts from the Veda literally and continues to exist even today in every language in a positive way, except Max Muller and the West, it's the word Arya. Now the word Arya in the Vedas refers to, is a self-reference by the Puru Bharata kings. So they don't call others Arya, they call themselves Arya, of high culture. That's what. But fundamentally it's a high culture denoting, and that is how, then later on, once everybody else were also being referred to as Arya, where whoever was noble, then the word is spread in Kannada, it is Arya. Its root is Arya. Iyer is Arya. So in every single Indian language, the Prakrit version of the word also exists. And hence, that is the perfectly Vedic word to refer to a noble woman of high culture who thinks beyond one's own self. That is important. So an Arya man, an Arya woman is that high cultured person who thinks beyond one's own self. Does not mean will not think of self. If you cannot cross Arthakama, there is no Dharma that is possible. So one who operates in the full stack of Dharma, Arthakama, Moksha, that is a Vedic woman. And that is the Vedic culture. And Arya represents. This is how finally we chose the name.
Really, very fascinating. What struck me when you actually said Mahabharata and Ramayana lives through the conversations, I was reminded of Prakash Belawadi's Parva. Right after lunch, there is a long conversation Krishna Dvaipayana has with himself. It's actually a fascinating part. Unfortunately, quite a few people slept through it. And Prakash had second thoughts about continuing with that portion. I hope he has not removed it. But that conversation actually brings out a whole lot of churn which happens. I think he starts right from his decision to actually participate in the Niyoga to what he is seeing in the Kurukshetra war. And that internal churn that Krishna Dvaipayana has is actually very important for that play. So I just brought in that because of his reference to the conversations being compressed into events, which did not happen there. And it was really worthwhile watching. I think it went on for about an hour. That section was. So whenever Parva happens next time, please do watch. It's an amazing play which runs for 9 hours, and it stays true to the soul of S.L. Bhairappa's book, and it's phenomenal production by Rangana. So we should say kudos to Prakash for bringing that onto the stage with So next, one of the things that Prakash mentioned earlier was about the Madhavi story.
Yeah.
So the Madhavi story is constructed fascinatingly. In fact, when I started it, I didn't know where it was going. Because I mean, it's a
when I first read it, even I felt it.
Yeah. So when I started the story, I didn't actually think it will end where it will end. I started, this is just another technique which is used, but then towards the end I realized that technique has been brilliantly chosen and extremely well executed. So congratulations to the author. And how did this come about? I mean, this is a danger we have always seen when our people read Indian Itihasa Puranas traditions through the Western eyes.
Yeah.
So, and the Western interpretations based on their vision through their prisms. So, this brings out the importance of telling our stories in our language. How did this story come about?
Yeah, it's an important story.
Yeah.
Just to give a little context, Madhavi is the easiest story to scandalize and distort in the entire tradition. You know, and it has been done. Vishnu Sahani has written a play on Madhavi in Hindi, where the scandalization has happened. That's where I read it first, unfortunately, and it stayed with me for a long time. But thankfully, and this is my humble submission to everybody here and to ourselves today in Bharatavarsha, if you read the original, there will be no doubt about any of the accounts. The reason being, Mahabharata is a work of 1 lakh shlokas. At the minimum 80,000, depending upon which recension you have taken, and at the extreme 1 lakh plus shlokas, you add Harivamsha, another 10,000 plus shlokas. Now, every single story is some stories of prominence such as Madhavi is of around 300-400 shlokas. So, because a lot happens, it doesn't get over in a short this thing. Now, if you pick few shlokas, distortion is the easiest thing that you can achieve. But if you pick the whole context, then our author in one of the interviews she has explained, Madhavi's story comes at 2-3 different places. The place where it comes here is when Garuda and Galava they go and they are telling story to somebody else. And so many things. If you take that context, you cannot distort the story at all. So this is something that I have learned. And in fact, I write on Mahabharata on Indica today. And I have written about Madhavi. And in this, I did not expect that I will have a Madhavi story because I know it's difficult. And thankfully, she wrote it. And this is the only story where time shifts from the Mahabharata era to modern era and goes back and forth, and so many things happen, because that's the only way this story could have been written. So, for the author also, that experience of distortion has happened, and the author has gone back to the original and has read it. So you read the original, chances of distortion are extremely low. That is why if you need to see the context in which anything has been said. Madhavi is the daughter who liberates Yayati and sends her back to the heavens. Swarga. Once again. Yayati loses his Swarga. Madhavi's sons taken back. Madhavi marries 4 times. None of the king looks down upon Madhavi. There itself, the perspective of the tradition is crystal clear. And the entire journey of Madhavi happens by her choice. There is no, evidence of force. And her children honor her and respect her. So there is no question of Galava doing something in this at all, taking her everywhere and so on and so forth. So if you take only the context that every marriage gets, 200 Shvetakarna horses, if you take only that dimension, it's easy to distort Madhavi's story. But if you take the complete thing and the fact that she does many things by choice, and finally she chooses a life of an ascetic, and finally her children, and when her father is in trouble, she comes, steps in, invokes her children to send him back to heaven. We are talking about an extraordinarily strong lady by the account of the tradition. Now after acknowledging that, you criticize, that's perfectly fine. But you cannot take out all that is inconvenient to you, pick only stuff that is convenient to you and then criticize. That is lacking intellectual integrity and cultural ethics. And that is what we have to put our foot down on, including Vishwasani. Everybody has succumbed. Why has it happened? Because there is nobody else who is reading it full and questioning. Thankfully, now I think, as I was talking to another person, Gaurav Tiwari, who runs an app called Sutradhara app, and he was saying that you get to the original, read it once, uske baad, you cannot distort it at all. Most people are being fed only the distorted versions, and they are fed so strongly that you think that maybe that's the right account. And see, even today, people think that Karna was caste discriminated. But in Mahabharata, there is not one instance of Karna being caste discriminated, because Sutas are royals, for heaven's sake. There were Suta rishis. When Arjuna goes to meet Indra, Lomaharshana is sitting along with Indra, who is a Suta. Kichaka is a Suta. Anga kings were always Sutas. So Sutaputra in Mahabharata as a reference is not at all negative even once. And when Karna goes to, lift and hit, out of 1269 manuscripts of Adiparva have been found, organized into 5 recensions. In that, in one recensions, in 5 sub-recensions, Draupadi says no to Karna to shoot. In all other versions, Karna shoots and fails. So, if you read the original, now you can criticize those 5 recensions, which is fine. Okay, fine. So, in that it happens. But what about the others? So, if you read the original, so in Kannada, we have Bharata, the reception of Prakash, 32 volumes of now. The perspective is very clear. So, we have now outsourced, like Prakash was mentioning that. Somebody else sitting somewhere ought not to be, defining our narratives. And we have it right in front of us. We have to just engage. And Madhavi is one such story where we not indulging has resulted in distortion. The tradition is very clear, and that is the construction of the story also. The first part where a narrative has been fed, and then your modern realities, you are looking at it from your own, distorted or struggled modern realities. And in the second, I love the Ajji character there, because it is one of that, it is that exposure that is required. I mean, a little bit of divine exposure is required for us to be able to overcome the difficulty that we are suffering now. Everything cannot be achieved intellectually alone. It's like the Kantara coming in, That needs to happen. But the more we engage with the original text, see, we should not become that generation that did not pass the tradition as it exists. That burden, that curse should not be on our generation. That is my worry. That we can't become that block. So we have to read it in the original and pass it.
See, in the Shakuntala story, no, I'm as ignorant as they come. Somewhat like somebody said, what I don't know can fill many libraries. So thing is, but in the Shakuntala thing, he says, you are like your mother, a loose woman, and you come and making this claim, he says. And then, Vishwamitra comes and says, what are you talking about? And he says, I'm glad you happened. I had to do this, to put her through this, because I need to convince people who are doubting around me, that this is the original thing, this is the real thing. In the Ramayana, when Sita is rescued after the war, he says, take all these broken wheels and all that, set it on fire, let her do the Agni Pariksha. He has to do it to convince his people that the queen keeps whatever the royal need of integrity is there. See, that would be the tradition then. I mean, that context you criticize, it is okay, is what you are saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you don't know this version and you just take the poetic version of Kalidas and say this is what happened,
then you are criticizing Kalidasa, which is okay.
Yeah.
But you are not criticizing the Mahabharata.
Yeah. You can't mix the two stories.
So, what's the plan to actually popularize the original text? Because clearly we are arriving at a point where there is no dispute that the original stories have to be told in an innovative way. In fact, this book has succeeded in that, because though the stories may seem abridged, they stay true to the original source. So that is a really tremendous achievement, and it's a really commendable thing. So how do we popularize the original stories the way they happened in the original sources, and make it popular rather than relying on I would actually name the authors who are actually doing a disservice, like it could be Amish or Devnath Patnaik or these kind of people who are fictionalizing a lot of these things, taking too many liberties and creating narratives which are, which may fascinate the youngsters, but then they do not really reflect what is in the original.
True. Good. Thanks for this question. See, I have with me my Indica fraternity authors. Some of them are here. Abhinav Agarwal is here. He's one of those Mahabharata exponents. And Arun Krishnan, who's just written a book on Nandi's charge, which is Pallava Chalukya era story. So we have a group of authors. We are a group of authors, and we can't. Sai Swarupa is not there here. She's the original stalwart of all of this. She's written 5 novels, all 5 on women, and some Vedic characters, and then Rukmini, and then Draupadi. All complete novels retold, but within the boundary of the tradition. So it is slowly emerging, I would say, and it needs a bit of scale, no doubt about it. It needs a bit of youth, no doubt about it. Now we have a group of, because we wrote 2 anthologies. Now we have up to 20 authors. Some of our authors are here, who all of them are deeply engaged with the text. So scale will happen, but scale will take some time, for it to happen. And what has happened is, in the last 20 years, it's transitioned from the Indian languages to English. See, till 90s, our young generations were not significantly English. I began writing in Kannada, and even today I can write more Kannada than I can write in English. But after 1991, the generations have become more English, and our traditional authors with traditional perspective are more in Indian languages even today. So the switch to happen will take a little bit of time. So, but I don't think it is literature alone that will solve this problem. The narrative, the visual narrative, if you don't have it under your control, you are going to lose it, because the Karna wrong narrative has set in because of the visual narrative. And the power is so strong that it's not easy to overcome. So we have to graduate into being able to produce, visual forms and narratives of this in an authentic way. And that will take some time, for us to happen. Otherwise, if you look at regional languages, Devudu wrote Mahadarshana Mahabrahmana in that era, Mahakshatra in that era. It is still a guiding light even today for how creative liberty should be executed within the boundary of the tradition. Extraordinary example it is. But where will we have that in English? So that in English now we are slowly, many are doing. But still we don't have the narrative control, and that narrative control will take some time. And we need to, we need the G.P. Rajaratnams and the Devudu Narasimha Shastris who will take one.
I want to
bag
make a
and go
suggestion.
everywhere.
I'm suggesting to Indica to consider this. See, during COVID, a strange thing happened because Doordarshan did not have content
Yeah.
to do it right through. They just, by the way, they put Mahabharata and Ramayana, and the viewership just surged. They put everyone behind. And this is 32 years ago they have done that, and this is still so popular. What it shows is that we have everything in India. We have 847 channels, so many OTT platforms. See, if Indica managed to create an OTT platform, and we can actually shoot these stories, we'll do it. We are all looking for quality work that we can do. We'll come really cheap because this is so satisfying work. You get a lot of great, committed people working for this. And this is something that you must explore with Indica, and we will see whether we can put a team together to actually make it possible. Then these dreams can be realized. We can actually put it out as great stories.
I think this is something that we'll take it to our Curator and mention this.
So we have two of the authors who are part of this anthology. We would like to invite them. Three?
Yeah, three of them.
Oh, okay, sorry, three.
Prasad is also.
I did wait, sorry.
We'll just put three chairs here then.
Yeah, we'll just invite them onto the stage, please. So this is actually an unplanned impromptu thing. Since they are here, we want to introduce them to you and maybe ask an informal question and give them a memento. So. So I would request Shivakumar to.
This is Manjula. Manjula wrote the story on Damayanti. She is also quite a known author. She's recently published a novel on Devayani, and she's also I think a couple of translations are going to come out soon. Achyutha, if you know in Kannada, Babu Krishnamurthy's novels. So she's doing that. Prasad is the youngest of our authors, and he is the one who is reimagined Shakuntala as the mother of Bharata, who rules Bharatavarsha. It's an important story that I'll briefly introduce the characters also. Rajini, she is the author of the story on Ulupi, and she writes a lot for children also. I'll briefly summarize the characters that they have written and what is the essence that is brought out, because for us each character had to stand for a certain essence. In the case of Damayanti, this is one of the most celebrated love stories in the tradition. If you ask which is the greatest love story, if you ignore Krishna, Rukmini and Rama Sita, but I will still say, even if you add them, for me Kana Damayanti is the greatest love story. It's in this story also, two things are important. One is the lovable Nala is extremely important. Nala represents the epitome of sensitivity that Aryaa men carried. And Damayanti is really the hero of this story. It's she who chooses Nala, ignoring other devatas. She who faces everything. And when she gets into trouble, it's her intelligence and so on and so forth.
And Vishwasa Kalpalala.
Absolutely, she absolutely does not lose faith. And finally, she questions her, why did you do this? And then when he explains, she sees what was the difficulty that Nala had. It's just fascinating. Shakuntala is, the version that we know is from Mahabharata, is from, Kalidasa, where Shakuntala appears to be little too gently and, little too, a victim of all kinds of circumstances, including fate and so on and so on. Not so in the Mahabharata. It's important to know. In the Adiparva story of Mahabharata, Shakuntala is very strong, very questioning, very independent, And not just that, finally, when you connect all the dots, you realize that the son that she brought up alone, see, when she goes to Dushyanta's court, Saradamana is already born. It's important to know that, in Mahabharata. She goes along with Saradamana, which is not the same in Kalidasa. So in Kalidasa, Dushyanta goes into, the ashram of Marichi, and there, he finds. So it's reversed over here. So in every way, this Shakuntala is a strong, fierce, fascinating woman who brings up a son who actually really shapes the culture of the civilization. Because it's in his time that the tradition considers as this region being united in one culture, and things move forward. And finally, he chooses a king who is not his own son. Bharata chooses Bhumanyu, who is the son of Bharadwaja, because he has lost faith in his sons. So this is another extraordinary. Ulupi, we all know, if all of us know, Ulupi comes and goes. But Ulupi does not come and go. She has played some role at various stages in Mahabharata. She is married, she loses her husband, and then she marries Arjuna. And she brings up a son all alone, and at various stages he goes back. There is, Ravan has a space in Mahabharata significantly. All those knots have been tied together to form a single story where Ulupi shapes the center while being away from the center. Everybody does not have to be within the center to shape it. She thinks of herself as important enough to the center while being far away from it. That's a fascinating dimension of Ulupi. So these are the three authors, and for me, very satisfied. All 10 stories, to be honest, as a curator, I'm quite satisfied, because each of them stands for a certain dimension which is not found. No two characters have the same dimension in this collection. Any questions?
Okay. So, why Damayanti?
I think the best way to impart whatever value system or whatever to anybody, but especially the younger generation, I think the stories have to be engaging. And if the stories have to be engaging, there has to be a strong character. It has to be a love story. If it is a love story, it's so much easier to read. And if they have strength of character, and if they command admiration, so it is easier to place them as some kind of a role model. So yeah, and Damayanti fits the role. So yeah.
It's beautiful when Bahuka, who later gets revealed, I don't want to tell the story, but when he apologizes for Nala's behavior, he says, you please go and tell her that, he gives an explanation. That's very good, that is,
Yeah. So, I think Invincible has already been released, if I'm not wrong. I saw it in the Rashotana store recently. Yeah. So, congratulations. I mean, it's a phenomenal book. Which is, I haven't read Invincible, but I have read Achyutha multiple times, because it's, it's a goose-pimple-inducing book. And I would highly recommend people to read all of Prakash Belawadi's books, not just Achyutha, but his other books
One
as well.
important thing about those Babu Krishnamurthy's books are that research
It's phenomenal.
is original research.
Yeah.
Although some of that research is in Hindi books also.
Correct.
It's exclusively found in Kannada books.
Correct. And the only other book that I can actually, from a different author, obviously is Shivramu's Atmahuti, which is it's not actually an autobiography, but it is written like an autobiography, by Shivramu of Savarkar. Atmahuti is another phenomenal book which people should read. And what are your other books upcoming?
I am hoping to translate most of Baba Krishnamurthy's works, but I don't know. As of right now, Adamya is almost done and it's in the editing phase. And the next is going to be Rudrabhisheka. And it's halfway done and it's going to come out soon. But immediately, right now, I am working, I've finished 2 of Savarkar's novels, and both of them are translated into English, and one of them is Gomantak, and the second one is Mobla. So both of them are probably going to come out next month.
Fantastic. All the best.
Thank you.
What are your current works? What are you working on other than this anthology?
Right now I'm not working on any novel or any story. I have a few thoughts. One thing is a natural or logical succession to this would be the story of Bharata, which I would like to flesh out. So yeah, I'm doing some research on that, but no concrete plans as of yet.
I have a question.
See, that's in the story you begin by her, her contemplative mood, where she, without too much bitterness, but some amount of wistfulness or sadness, she doesn't understand why she has been abandoned by her parents, right? So it recurs in irony when Dushyanta also abandons her, there. But at that time, when I was reading it, I thought, some breakdown, something will happen. But she's so feisty that she says, you were a fool, she says, to him. No, the thing is, are you really conscious that she's dealt with it once and she knows how to deal with it now? Is that a sense of it there? Because, typically people say it happened to me again, then, you'll go into a kind of depressed mood.
Well, yes, she has dealt with it, but then her upbringing, her background is such, she's lived in forest all through. She's not the one who will break down. She will fight it. And when Dushyanta says, what credibility do you have? It actually touches her raw nerve, and it infuriates her. In fact, she comes up like a fire there. So yeah, there are 2 ways to look at it. Person could break down, or they could rise to some other level, and Shakuntala does rise to that level. So yeah, that's how I thought about it, and that's how it is in Mahabharata as well.
She's also the daughter of Vishwamitra in some stage.
Absolutely.
And that parable making is also good. I want to mention that, where she takes, the son and shows the lion family, in mourning because the king is gone. It's beautiful that is,
That's the imagination that the tradition allows, for us.
And actually it is in Mahabharata, not exactly. It's in Drona Parva, when it happens that Yudhishthira is lamenting Abhimanyu's death, and at that point he has a conversation with Narada. Narada says that, okay, even a great king, Chakravarti Bharata, did not escape death. So at that point he narrates the story briefly. And in the literature it is such that Bharata is always teasing animals, he is fighting with them. And there is one line in that Bharata stopped when Shakuntala asked him to. So I thought, okay, let's expand this.
This is important because this is how the stories are told in Mahabharata.
That you won't get the entire story at one place, and that's a problem from a modern standpoint, because we want narratives that are consistent. But tradition, at that stage, Yudhishthira learning that is more important, and it's written from a performative and this transformation standpoint, not from intellectual narrative standpoint.
because we have a modern problem, now we have to reconstruct these narratives painstakingly. In a sense, what we need is a Vyasaization of the tradition once again on the modern plane, which is not easy, which one book cannot achieve that. But the process, that is what is required. You know, we should be, you know, the Indian state should be able to look at the tradition and say that we will have to reorganize our texts like this so that we can take care of modern narratives. The West could have done it. But we will not realize the importance of this. We will not get the Bharata we want unless somebody does this. And this thing, 5 of us will just do 10 books and be lost. Now, this is equivalent of it is, Prakash, what Mysore kings did. Jayacharajendra Grantharatnamala. 100 books they just brought from, you know, Sanskrit to Kannada in a project. That is holding the tradition in Karnataka significantly. Now that kind of work in a very large scale is required.
So Ulupi is a fascinating character. I mean, we've watched it in the film Babruana also. It kind of stays true to that story. But in this, there are some insights which are quite valuable to readers who are not familiar with the story. So really well done. I mean, it's quite well written and stuff. So how did you decide on writing the story about Ulupi, who is like, you know, as Shivakumar said, it comes in bits and pieces across various stages, you know, training Babru Ahana once and then bringing up his roads and all that. So how did you put it together? How did you arrive at this character to be written about, and then how did you go about processing it?
Actually, I did not think about retelling. I mean, the problems that exist in the versions which are distorted, all those I was not exposed to. I'm quite pure in the way that I knew only the traditional version through our Chitakatha, and we all wrote C. Rajgopalachari's Mahabharata exams in 10th grade, I mean high school. So I was not aware of this at all. I mean, I feel quite illiterate with respect to that. But the only motivation that I had was that I want to write a positive story, because I have seen Ulupi versions in which she is with her brother conniving against Chitrameda and these kind of things. I don't think any of the women from those times were conniving. Even the wives of Duryodhana or even Ravana, they were all, I think, very pure in nature. So there were none which were impure. So I felt a little bad that these kind of narratives have come up. But I didn't think it was to this extent. Only when Shivakumarji mentioned it, did I realize, oh yeah, it is quite bad. So of all the characters that I saw, I found her that she's a mother, first of all. I think all of them are mothers, so that doesn't distinguish her. One distinguishing factor was she brought up the son of the other wife of her husband. Even that is not distinguishing enough, because we have Kunti doing the same, or we had other instances. Here she chooses to do this herself, and she goes and approaches Chitrangada herself. And I feel that that her generosity shown in the face of adversity. She chose a very unique way of finding strength in the situation. So that I really admired. I think women of today can look up to this character a lot, and that is what the intention was to write the story. She has everything in her. She doesn't have hate, greed, or she doesn't come against anybody in the face of the problems that she faces. Everything is unexpected in her life. She meets Arjuna, suddenly she becomes a single mother and she has all sorts of problems. Some of her family doesn't accept it. All societal problems. These are all common problems today. So we can see that this directly applies to our lives. How should we approach a problem? Should we actually cry and feel the victim of the situation, or should we find another woman who can give us strength? I think today women have to be more supportive of each other, and this stands out in the story. We see Chitrangada and being supportive of each other, and this is very important for today. So I felt that it is relevant and we should tell the story.
In fact, the one concern that she has is whether her brother will accept her son as his nephew. So that's that was actually, when I read that, it actually made me feel, oh wow, this is what she wants. I mean, that is her concern, that her brother, with whom she has a long-standing conflict, because he thinks Kandiva Dahana was a crime against the Naga, and then he has never been able to forgive Arjuna for it. But then, that was something Prakash mentioned about, something being destroyed for something else to be built, kind of a thing. So those conflicts are really well fleshed out and well brought out in the story. So
there's an image in it. I want you to respond to that, because I want to amplify what you said about tradition and what you said. When Shakuntala says stop, he stops listening. See, the break point between brother and sister doesn't happen, because when it comes to that point, there is the booming voice of the father saying enough, and the son yields to that. Then that idea is an idea of tradition.
Absolutely.
Right? He says, I won't live in this house if this has happened. It doesn't come to that. I think it's a great lesson to learn in that. That image, that meme.
So conflict, particularly, I thought these things happen even these days. When we have family, there is some not acceptance, or there is some where your children should not be influenced by certain people in your family. These kind of things happen. But just don't break your relationship. You have to manage it. For example, you don't tell your children your uncle is the bad person. That doesn't happen, right? So I imagine the same way. She wouldn't have told him, it's not, he is bad, you just forget about him. You just think that your father is good. That's not going to happen. So she keeps him, he has some hate in his mind, which is not good for him. But she doesn't ever say that he is a bad person. So I wanted to bring that out today, because I think every woman manages these kind of things in her own family. And these kind of things existed for a long time.
So she welcomes when the father actually intervenes on her behalf in the fight, in the beginning. And then in the end, when the father is angry, but the matter is resolved, she says, it's okay, as my brother. I love that, it's very good.
So we never break away from the family. We always try to manage conflicts, and that's what women are.
This is important. This is very important. I'll tell some, a story from Myram's experience. That it seems, the thing is, striving for maximum continuity is one aspect of our tradition. That doesn't mean that you will not eliminate the wrong or the bad, but you will not eliminate it until it is absolutely impossible for that to be taken care of. So this is called the satatya, that satatate, trying to ensure a natural course of flow to the maximum extent possible is a striving. In our own extended family, there was long back, apparently, there was one place where there was a conflict between a brother and a brother-in-law. There was a conflict between which they had stopped talking. So this brother-in-law had to marry his daughter, and his daughter's prospective father-in-law learnt about this conflict and said that you are not going to invite your sister and brother-in-law for the marriage. That is not possible. They have to come.
So finally, a resolution happened because somebody else wanted to ensure a natural course of flow in a family where his son was, getting married into. Now, this striving for continuity is an extremely important, learned behavior in the tradition, which is being always questioned in the modern era as a negative. What we have held in the civilization as an extremely positive, life-sustaining thing has become a problem in the individuated and individualized era. So this conflict, we need to recognize that as conflict. And then, we have to, which lens will be where to resolve this for the future? Is it the Ulupi lens or is it the ideological individuality? That's a complex thing that we're going to face in the coming years.
It's the ethnocentric self that matters. See,
Absolutely.
in Bhairava's Parva, there is a moment where Yuyudhana tells this story. He says, see, when he's telling Balabhadra, you are a supporter of Rukmini, see what happened to him. Rukmini went to him because he had not seen her for so many years. She went, she prostrated, and the tears fell on his feet, and he melted. She says, Pradyumna's marriage happens. That thing, that idea is there, that you somehow manage this. It's a great idea.
See, Vidura does not think that I am Dasiputra, you guys fight. For him, it's a single course of flow of the civilization. By the virtue of he now being part of the larger civilization, for him it's his personal problem to ensure that the dharma flows.
I like the Yuyutsu thing, part in the Subhadra story also.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll close the session now with a small memento to the authors. And
I also want to introduce Sindhu Kulkarni. She is the person who's, designed this cover.
Oh, please.
Her teammate, Srikantha, they designed the cover.
Before we close, any questions from the audience to?
Oh, the cover actually is your photo.
So, namaste. So, I think the idea that Prakash Belawadi proposed, I think, looks like it is going to happen. The seed has been sown. But until then, maybe we can have a series of talks on multiple platforms and also on YouTube channels where you dissect each of these very important characters that have been distorted in history and get the ball rolling. And where you just take the talk is not about the entire story or the entire Mahabharata, but it's just about that character and fleshing out that character in popular imagination. So this is my idea. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we will continue to do that. Writing and discussions, that part we will continue to do that. It's just that it won't scale through that, but that will not stop at all. In fact, in Indica, there is a group of Mahabharata passion led by Abhinav Agarwal and Sai Surappa. So we are at it all the time, to do that. But yes, scale will require the visual form.
Villarigo Namaskara. Since we are on the topic of Mahabharata, I had a small question which digresses from this your book. Recently, I was on a debate where we were discussing as to how the name Bharat came, the ancient name of India, Bharat came about. Was it on the visions for the king Bharata, or was it Rishabhadev's son Bharata?
So the Jain tradition maintains that Rishabhadeva son Bharata.
Okay, because there are two conflicting versions of it.
Always there will be multiple versions, and that's why the tradition does not resolve it. Tradition keeps it as it is, and if you look at it from the Vedas, Bharati is a great goddess of the 10 mandalas. There are 3 great goddesses. They are referred to in something called the Apri Sukta. Apri Sukta is the family Sukta of the sages who wrote a particular mandala. Every mandala has one Apri Sukta, and every mandala has the great goddesses. Mahi, Bharati, Ila, Saraswati are the great goddesses. So Bharati is the great goddess of the this thing itself, Rigveda itself. That is one source for Bharatavarsha. The second source for Bharatavarsha is the Bharata Chakravarti's son. And if you look at all the Puranas, in the Vaidika Puranas, the Rishabhadeva's son comes and goes, but Shakuntala's son Bharata is the great name. Even in Mahabharata, he comes out as a strong name. Similarly, in the Jain traditions, which is also co-referenced in the Vaidika Puranas, Rishabhadeva's son, as you will never see a single account in our tradition. For the same thing, there will be multiple accounts. So that Rishabhadeva's son Bharata, but he is not the main person in the Jain tradition. Bahubali is the main person actually. So it's very unlikely that not the main person, somebody who is defeated, actually his name is there. So, but it's okay. You can keep both accounts, and tradition has not tried to do a binary between them.
See, the idea of Abhignana is there. See, the idea of Abhignana is Gurutu. When you see this, it reminds you of Shakuntala. It's the Gurutu of Shakuntala. That is Abhignana. And names as metaphors in these cases are actually is a Abhignana. And that is why there is no conflict of having different versions. As long as you use it as an Abhignana. When you hear this, you remember that. You understand that. It does not matter if you use it in another story, which is why suddenly Anjaneya can appear in the Mahabharata story. Because he comes there as an Abhignana. If you look for a sequential narrative, then you're not in the Indian tradition. That is it.
Namaskara. ಇದು ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಒಂದು ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವೇಷನ್ನು. ಇದು ಮಾಧವಿ ಕಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕಥೆ ನೋಡಿದ್ರು ಎಲ್ಲದರಲ್ಲೂ ಒಂದು ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ. ಆದರೆ ಮಾಧವಿ ಕಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಧವಿಗೆ ಯಾವ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟು ಇಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ಸೊ ಬಟ್ ದ ಆಥರ್ ಇಸ್ ಬ್ರಿಂಗಿಂಗ್ ದ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್. ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್. So, ಇದೊಂದು observation.
See, the conflict is in the 21st century. That is the conflict. ಈ ಶತಮಾನದ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ is what is being
villain Stevenson.
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಒರಿಜಿನಲ್ ಕಥೆನಲ್ಲೂ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ಈಗ
ಮಾಧವಿಗೆ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆನೇ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ಅವಳೇ ಗಾಲವನ್ನು ಹೇಳೋದು, ನನಗೆ ವರ ಇದೆ, ನೀನ್ ವರಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಡ.
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಎಂಡೆಲ್ಲರು ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಪ್ಯಾರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅವರು, ಶಿ ಕುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಪ್ರೊಟೆಸ್ಟೆಡ್, ಶಿ ನೆವರ್ ಸೆಡ್.
ಕಡೆಗೆ ಅವಳು ಯಯಾತಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮದುವೆ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕು. when she wants, when Yayati proposes a Swayamvara, he rejects the Swayamvara. So the system does not reject the Swayamvara for her at all. So that is an extraordinary, in the tradition there are many extraordinary journeys. Even when Drupada says, how can Yudhishthira say that all 5 of you will marry? Vyasa comes. He says, okay, in the past there are 4 instances where this has happened. Yudhishthira doesn't even say that. In my mind, if this has appeared as true, then it has to be true, because I never tell a lie. That is the confidence of Yudhishthira. Dharma nanmulakane badlagatte is Yudhishthira's confidence, because that is his tapas. Nobody else has the courage to say that. Only Yudhishthira can say that. So, in each story, the extraordinary nature comes for some reason and is forming itself in some ways and in some reason. So, adu kathe balage nodadre, the conflict will not be there. Absolutely, Madhavi does not have a conflict. Only place where it appears she has a conflict is when she rejects Swayamvara, for heaven's sake, that too proposed by the father.
Sorry, I can't pose this question. This one
one more question. There is one more.
May I?
Yeah.
A very good and blessed evening to one and all. I just want to bring up a thing which Sri Prakash Belawadi was speaking about, which has been, paining me many a time actually. I have not got a convincing answer to this as yet. Lord Rama, epitome of virtues, he was such a great person, but why did he even allow his wife to go through the Agni Pariksha just to convince his subjects? This I have not been able to be, I have not been convinced about this, though I have spoken to many people. Can I get a convincing answer for this?
I'll try, See, in the beginning of in the Ramayana, when Narada describes, could there be such a person with a list of great virtues? Narada describes, yes, there is one person in Saket called Rama. He is like this. So he is introduced to you as a person without fault. Maryada Purusha, the epitome of all virtue. He will make no mistake. And then the author makes him commit what appears to be a mistake every time, mistake after mistake. He shoots Wali from behind. He's a great hero, but he shoots Wali from behind. This is the thing, you can't do right all the time. What happens is, time is always running out and you're conflicted and you choose what you will say for that moment and you do it. And you think about it the other way around. He struggles to do the right thing. It may not appear right. He suffers a lot. He has a pratima of Sita next to him. He never marries again. Now the problem with this is, the author who can write the Ramayana could have written a story, whereas Rama is a little bit like Rajnikant. He can solve everything. Why he doesn't do that is what we should think about, I'm saying. It's not about a historical Rama. It is again a metaphor, an abhignana of the good person. It's so difficult to be good, it is saying.
I think this is very long, this topic has troubled a civilization for 5,000 years. That is the first important thing that all of us should keep in mind. Even today, in the Parayana Parampara, this part they will skip it off. Because nobody wants to see Sita going through this experience. So in a way, the text having that has had a reverse effect on the society. Society absolutely does not want Sita to go through this. It's kind of cathartic effect. I'm not saying it was planned like that by the tradition, but that's what it is. But in the Vyakhyana Parampara, this has been discussed a lot and various explanations is there. Maybe one session can exclusively be done on this topic itself. This topic is important. We should not shy away from this topic at all. This is to be taken on and engaged with and experiment. But like Prakash said, the point is, it was very easy to make a positive sales, smooth going through. Point is a message that in this society, in the common society, there will always be a problem on these things, and the king will have to deal with it. And the king, a great king, always will deal with it by inflicting pain on one's own self, not just on Sita, on self also. So it has to be looked at in the context of what happens in the text, in the original Valmiki Ramayana, not in the versions that are floating around. But yes, like you, madam, you said that has troubled me as a kid. And that has made me go through the texts in various forms and multiple versions of Ramayana. And now I have some sense of why it is written like this. But we will try and do an independent session on this. Thank you.
I've been listening to the conversations, all of it. I think there is one distinct theme, the original versus the distortion. I think, don't you think we need a campaign for asking people to read the original ones than the distorted ones.
Absolutely needed. That is, every time, every WhatsApp group that I find in, it is this that I find in. Don't listen to me. Can you not go back? I mean, we are such an intellectual, intelligent, highly educated, but we want to rely on the ahwani, I would say, things that are floating around everywhere, and we don't want to touch the original. That doesn't speak well of us. That speaks that we are not confident, of neither of ourselves nor of versions that are coming. We're shaky and we are afraid of touching the original because lest it changes something that we are desperately holding on to. So we become that weak kind of civilization. Absolutely, the journey is towards the texts. They are also, let me not even say original. Kalidasan is also original. But don't blame Kalidasa's version on Vyasa. And don't blame that version on something else. Know how the tradition has evolved. This revolution is absolutely required in the country. There is no doubt about that. And in the digital era, we have access.
Okay, so the second question I had was, this is great, and the audience, the people who are going to be reading this, and also the people to whom you appeal to read the original, right? Okay, that's a different generation. So I have an 11-year-old daughter. So we moved, I was in the US for 15 years. We moved back because I want my daughter to grow up in India. Right, when she was 2.5. So she's learned Sanskrit from age of 2. She's a Bharatanatyam dancer. She's learning Carnatic music, and she reads. She can tell stories from the Mahabharata and everything. At the same time, the context in which she is growing up, right? The characters that keeps her modeling them. So the modeling that's happening is all mostly from Disney, and that unicorn and all those things. And actually, I'm trying to address that through another startup of mine. But still, when I talk to people, they say, okay, these are great stories, and they dealt with those things in their times, in their context. It's not relevant to the times today. And I take the example of my daughter. She is exposed to both sets of stories, but when she goes to school and with friends, we had about 25 kids come over for some kids party, and the entire group, not even one kid could tell me the names of the 5 Pandavas. Okay, not even one. So these things don't even exist in their consciousness. So somewhere we have to address that. And of course we can wait for the government to, NEP 2020 is great, to bring it into school and all that. But still the distortions have happened at the level where they say, where's the context where I can apply all these stories? Where's the context where I can actually model these behaviors? It's irrelevant. I don't think so. I'm trying on my little survey in that direction, but wanted to hear what you guys think.
I'll put it this way that most of our narratives are definitely for the not elderly, but definitely adult. This book is written for 21 plus, definitely.
Easy reading.
But there are some people reading 15 plus under guidance, but we still need versions that are exclusively, 12 plus. Amarachitra served that purpose at some point in time. We don't have it, and that's the project that people who are versed, somebody like Rajni who is writing for children, will have to take this.
I am a mother of 2, so my writing journey began at this exact point that you mentioned, that my children were not reading much Indian books, and it was mostly Western. Everything is set in Western context. So for this exact reason, I started writing stories for them. Of course, they read Amarchitra Katha, but the problem I think is with the narration style. They are so used to this Western style. We need to rewrite these stories in Western style. Unless we do that, it is not going to catch up. And that is why I'm going to still stick to story writing for children, because there is a lot of scope. I think that's one thing we can do. And there are also, I think, these television shows which are popular these days. I don't know if people watch, even those Chota Bheem and these things, they are quite good, I would think. But taking forward those things is very important. It's not enough till that we address only till the age of 10. Beyond that, we don't have a Harry Potter equivalent or Narnia and all those things. My son tells me, you should write these. I said, I'm still developing my skills, but I think many of them, there is no, I would say it's very difficult to find a publisher. I wrote many in Kannada, but nobody was ready to publish it. So I just stopped, and I was looking, really looking for opportunities, and I would thank Shivakumar ji for selecting my piece, because I thought it was really simple English. I used to write for children, and I continued in the same way, and I was not sure if adults will receive it well. And I also used this Harikathe we used to have in, I don't know, tradition now, I don't know if it exists. I wrote this based on my Harikathe experience from childhood. So I did all these things, but I think many more people need to do it, and more experienced people. I am just starting out, and it will take me a lot of time. But children's authors are the need of the day, and publishers must be so open to newer people, because when I approach these traditional children's publishers who have a reach, they're just not interested in new ones. They just reject your work outright. It's disheartening, but I am not disheartened. I'm still continuing. So hopefully I have an answer for you someday.
There's a strange anecdote about Tolkien. Lord of the Rings. Somebody asked him why did he write it. He said, I thought Britain didn't have a mythology. I decided to invent one. See how the standards are differently applied, saying, it's all old, now it's not relevant, you are saying to one thing, and the other one you are willing to invent a whole thing. And see, but it's a battle, but you should not be disheartened. See, look at how everybody is sitting and is engaged with it. It's just that we need to stay with this,
Stay cold.
Just
one thing I want to add. So I asked my daughter why you are more fascinated with this Elsa, Anna, Frozen, and Harry Potter and all these things. She said one word: magic. These stories have magic. This is magic. Magic.
But there's a lot of magic in your stories.
How do you see the episode of Ekalavya? Because it is creating a lot of social conflict.
Two episodes that have created that conflict is one is Karna, the other is Ekalavya. Ekalavya's story should not be read only from the Adi Parva dimension. Ekalavya comes at multiple places, and also Ekalavya has a relationship with Jarasandha. So if you read all in the tradition, all the 18 Puranas plus Mahabharata is read together. They are not read separately. So the Ekalavya version, that is collective of all 18 Puranas plus Mahabharata, and all of them are ancient and they have not been written in any time in response to queries that come over here. They are very clear that Ekalavya's movement towards adharma, Krishna then finally ends him. Plus, Drona rejecting Ekalavya is because Drona has promised Arjuna, period, no other reason. And Drona rejecting Ekalavya to take him as a Shishya is because he is promised that he will stick to royalty, and that is Drona's choice. So many other gurus have taught everybody else. So, a Vidya not being given to a specific community is not a universal reality in the Indic tradition. There are a umpteen number of hunters who have been taught otherwise also. One. Second is that if you look at, there is a person by name Dharampal who studied the British records between 1800 to 1820 and has published 5 books. One of the books is Beautiful Tree, that presents statistics of how many schools were there in India between 1800 to 1820 before the British attack date. Their own administrators have recorded it. And there it is clear that in schools, children from various communities, castes, studied together, including Sanskrit. So, the community-based rejection is not a universal thing. So, what Drona does is what Drona does by his choice and not a institutionalized rejection. Otherwise, you will see huge number of people from various communities learning from various communities in the tradition. So, if you read the full texts, you will that discrimination falls off actually. But if you read only the Adi Parva of Mahabharata and that too selective versions, then you will caste discrimination will come off very, very easily. In Mahabharata itself, there are so many other stories. It's only some extreme spiritual stuff that is probably very community oriented and not given. Otherwise, it is not so. So I think that's another narrative that needs to be taken back. But that's going to be harder than many other narratives because it's gone deep into the tradition like that.
It's going to be effort. We've just scratched the surface, and there is so much more to talk about this. And I think the greatest purpose of any writing is to provoke thought in people. And with the response that we've seen from you with the questions that have been coming, and I'm sure if we had another hour, we would still have some amazing question and answers here. I think Aryaa has already become a successful book in the way it is provoking thought in people. So congratulations to all of you already. So I'm sure it will reach a lot more people, and it is a huge incentive for you to kind of bring more such books, because that is the need of the hour. We know people need it, people are looking for original stories, and the numerous questions that are coming up needs to be answered, and the current literature is hugely insufficient for the kind of questions that we have, and Indic Books is really doing a great job. Sri Shivakumar is also amazingly part of this huge movement that is, I think, just beginning to happen, and it has a long way to go. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I really feel bad to stop this wonderful conversation. I was really enjoying every bit of it, but unfortunately, yes, we have to end this because that's the call of time. So I would like to have Achyutha quickly give a token of appreciation to Sri Shivakumar for having spent so much time, and his knowledge, I think, is something that we need to kind of take more time to discuss and talk and make use of. So hope we get more such opportunities to discuss with you, sir. Also a token of appreciation for Prakash for having initiated this whole thing. In fact, he was the one who called and set this whole thing up. I'm so thankful that he actually made this happen. He saw potential in this, and he thought it was important that we have this conversation, and I think this deserves further more conversation. Thank you, Prakash, for being a part of this. We also have a token of appreciation for the wonderful writers and the designer who made these things possible. We're also thanking the other writers in spirit. They're not here, but lots of gratitude for all of you for putting in the work, for putting in all the hard work to research and give us these wonderful stories. Hope you continue to write more. We would really love to read a lot more such wonderful stories from all of you. In fact, writing today has become a slightly rare talent, I believe, because a lot more people are getting into writing dialogues and scripts for television and film. But writing stories and publishing books is something that is priceless, and we need to kind of really stand by such wonderful writers who have been giving us such wonderful stories. So thank you so much from Meru Foundation for Indic Arts. Thank you for all the staff and of the Indian Institute of World Culture. The books are available outside for sale. Please feel free to buy them. If you want more, you can also talk to Sri Shivakumar, order them online. They're also available on Amazon. Buy as many books as possible, give them to people, because these are stories that need to be told. Thank you and good night.